Okay, so hello and welcome to another episode of the Instahyre Roundtable. This is a place where leaders and ideas meet. Today is a very special day. We are starting off our BFSI leadership series, and we'll have a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about hiring, recruitment, technology and recruitment, future of work in the BFSI industry. With that, we start off our first of the episodes in the BFSI segment. With that, let's discuss what today's agenda will be. So today's agenda is reimagining hiring in banking, how companies are adopting to the future of work and technology. And before we move on, let's discuss about how we build Instahyre. So Instahyre is a revolutionary platform that allows companies to find talent with 10x more accuracy and 10x less time compared to any other solutions in the market. We work with companies like Amazon, Walmart, Cisco, Geo, PayPal, Uber, etc. Okay, so with that, we start off our discussion, and we have today a speaker. Our speaker is Bilal Ahmed Shaikh. He is the SVP of Talent Acquisition at Citi. So over to you, Bilal, and the audience wants to know a little bit about you. So over to you, Bilal.
Thank you, Sabjit. And first of all, thank you for having me today and calling me an expert, right? So I'll try and live up to that. Though I think I'm really excited to just share my perspective, what I've learned in the last 17 years in recruiting, and a little bit about me, right? I've been working with Citi in talent acquisition team for about 4.5 years now. And prior to that, I was with JP Morgan for close to about 10.5 years, right? So I've spent most of my career in banks, and that's probably why I think you've chosen me to be part of this series, Sarvajit. So I think overall 17 years of professional experience, all of that has been in recruiting and largely in technology, hiring in the banking finance domain. Currently, I manage the revenue side, the domestic business of Citibank from a talent acquisition standpoint, and I also had early careers campus recruitment for South Asia.
Okay, okay. Welcome, Bilal, to our episode, and let's start off our discussion. So, my first question to you will be: how has the rapid digital transformation in the banking sector influenced the talent acquisition strategies, and particularly your strategies of how you make it with your teams and with your other SBUs?
Oh, great. I think you started with a very good question. The transformation is all that we've been hearing the last couple of years,
Yeah.
right? And I think in what COVID has done to digital transformation is a reminder of an old saying to me. That is, necessity is the mother of inventions, right? And
Exactly.
almost all business sectors has pivoted to a new strategies during pandemic, and most of them were largely tech enabled, tech focused.
Yeah.
And by virtue of that, and it's a good thing, right? It's creating more jobs in technology, but it has also created a huge demand supply gap in the market, which
Yes.
most of the gurus I know that did see it coming, but they
Mhm.
didn't see it coming so fast. And
Yes.
nobody saw pandemic coming. Nobody saw how this will really impact the workforce and the hiring and all of that. So this has created a huge gap at a and probably we were expecting this gap to come at some point in 2025, 2026. We saw that coming, but it was just fast tracked due to the
Mm.
pandemic driven hiring and the transformation, which has created more tech jobs. And if you look at demand supply gap, it's a global phenomenon. It's not that
Yes.
just in India that we are struggling with. Uh, if you look at the facts, I mean, one of the reports that I was reading from NASCOM, in India, particularly for technology, the demand supply gap is at about 21%.
Mm.
Very high, it may sound, but if you compare it with some of the other tech hiring locations like USA, China, and UK, this is still very little, very less, right?
Yes.
Uh, but but if you look at 21% supply gap, demand supply gap is huge for us to, from the context of the volume and the
Mm.
geography that we operate in. I always say
Mm.
India has multiple countries within. It's not
Yeah.
just India has one country. You have Pune, you have Bangalore, you have Chennai, and they all operate with a very, very different culture and the kind of the industry mix.
Yes.
But the good news amidst all of this is that we are also the nation who produces the second largest number of STEM graduates,
Yes.
right? I mean, APAC overall produces 70% of the global STEM talent. India, particularly, if you look at it, 30% of STEM graduates globally comes from India. So that means we have this talent pool, an early talent pool, as we
Hmm.
call it in early career team, is available for us to really, hire, groom, and take them into the corporate ambit. So I think that has been the biggest boon for most of the organization, and not just particularly in banking. What I have seen in the last couple of years in the campus, the competition, the hiring competition at campus was as high as what we see in the lateral hiring space.
Exactly.
So more and more organization, of course, including banking organization, has increased their intake from the campuses, and there has been a lot of focus on grooming that talent and learning. There are a lot of other organizations like Imaticus and quite a few of grad that are playing a huge role in terms of upskilling and training those talents to
Hmm.
fit into the corporate culture faster. Right? So
Hmm.
that has been one of change that I have noticed in the strategies banks have adopted. So while there has been a significant talent scarcity at a mid and a senior level that we are all aware of, but since there is ample or abundance of talent available at an early level, you have also seen in the range of 2 to 5 years of experience in technology, there has been very high offer dropout in the industry. Now,
Yeah.
that's another topic for discussion as
Yeah.
to, if you ask any of my peers, they will all say that the challenges that they
This
face
is
in
the
the
most
last few
asked
years.
question in all my webinars: how to reduce offer drops and
Absolutely.
how to deal with them.
Yeah, and I think that's quite concerning because it's more
Yeah.
and more global organization wants to hire in India,
Hmm.
but they're also kind of averse of this fact that the offer dropout or maybe for the lack of good word unprofessionalism that we see across. I think
Hmm.
that there is still an opportunity for us to probably be more professional to our commitment,
Yeah.
but it's a harsh reality. We've been living with it. Industry has been living with it. Nobody was spared. Be it internet organization, be it banks. Everybody has had a
Hmm.
lot of challenges with offer dropout. Now, when you look at the offer dropout, I think one of the theme that came out in the last 2 years is like compensation. You pay more, you to get more.
Yeah.
But that's not where it stops, right? I mean, there is no end to how much you could pay. So the organization really also had to focus on, positioning their employee value proposition in a very transparent, at the same time in a smarter way. So what I mean by saying that, if I'm a bank, how do I really not compete with others in the industry, but rather position myself, my organization in a way that attracts the right talent that not just fits for the role that I'm hiring, but also are interested in the culture or the kind of work that we do in the bank. Right. So that this whole USP and the value proposition has been given a lot of focus. You've seen some of the organization really inched up their branding strategy in the last couple of years
Yeah.
compared to what you've seen in the past, right? So these
Yes.
are some of the adoption of best practices that I've seen and how it has really translated into hiring attraction. There
Yeah.
is one more aspect which I've been seeing for the last 10 years rather in investment banks. There is this notion in the industry with technologies that banks probably doesn't have the cutting edge technology
Yeah.
work. They don't really do core development. They don't write the
Hmm.
code and source data. But I think that's to a large degree has changed significantly in the last decade, not just the last 2 years. Uh, there has been a lot of focus on in-house product development. Algo
Yes.
trading platforms are being built within the organization.
Hmm.
And there is more emphasis on machine learning, data analytics. So there is a shift in the complexity of the tech hiring that we're doing and the work that we do in India. There are global capability centers are being built in India where the entire product development within banks is happening in India with complete accountability and ownership being driven from the country. So it's no more a cost arbitrage center. Nobody sees India as the low cost location. Of course, we do have that advantage, but it's also be seen as the place where you could really innovate and develop new things. So
Yes.
it's banks are no more doing that re-engineering or
Hmm.
managing legacy application, which probably is the perception around. It has really changed 360 degree to working on newer technology, cutting edge technologies, right? So I
Yes.
think that has been one challenge for bank to really put that story out there
Yeah.
for folks who would probably want to work with fintech or product organization, thinking probably bank may not have that cutting edge work.
Mhm.
So how do you really advertise your role? Has bank probably had to do that a bit more than a product and
Mhm.
fintech
Yeah.
organization. When you hear a fintech product, you imagine that okay, they probably have something artificial intelligence or something to do with machine learning or
Yeah.
Python coding. But that you don't get that feeling when you hear about a bank doing any of that hiring. So you'll have to do a bit more as a recruiter to explain what you do, how you do to attract the right talent. And it is being done in a lot of variety of ways. Right? Branding is just one aspect of it. Networking, connecting with candidate, positioning your job wells. Your job description has to be crafted beyond just generic words out there as to what you do as an application programmer.
Mm.
I think these are some of the things, Sabjit, that I have observed in the last couple of years that bank had to really transition to.
Great. So you talk about transition and also the branding and how you position a bank, because we have been working with a lot of similar companies who have like transition from being called as an enterprise to a startup culture, what you say, and then they have focused more on delivering the word that we work on a very high scale. You'll be working with a lot of scale, so that also I think a lot of banks have been doing. And as you talk about the product development, in-house product development, like algorithm trading and using of AI and using of ML, I think what is your opinion on the essential like skills and competencies that banks will prioritize or have been prioritizing as to adopt to the future of work and technology? Future of work and technology will mean like maybe future of work will mean like gig work, or flexible working on technology will mean like what you have said, AI, ML, and all
Yeah,
the intelligent, smart technologies out there.
yeah, that's a very good question. I think what I believe and what I probably have read and known about how the world is transforming. I
Yeah.
think that half of us will need to reskill ourselves in the next 5 years, including all of us on the call. And this is to do with because of the double disruption that we are going through. One is because of the economic impact post pandemic that we are all aware of. And the
Mm.
other is the increasing automation that is
Yes.
transforming everyday's job, right? That we do. So there is all of us really need to reskill.
Mm.
Now, the question that you ask, essential skill,
Mm.
has to be really being defined very, very carefully when you're looking at hiring for the future of work and technology.
Mm.
So, for an example, if you're looking to hire a Java developer, a generic, Java developer, application programmer, would you look for a software programmer who is an expert in Java, or would you look for an expert expert software programmer? I would
Mm.
rather look for an expert software programmer and not pay so much of emphasis on Java, because Java is hot now, may not be tomorrow. So, what's relevant today in this VUCA world, or
Mm.
what is hot today, what is most in demand today, might not be relevant tomorrow. So the whole assessment most of the organizations are now doing are probably on the fundamental skills, the essential skill as you called
Basics.
out, and that needs to be defined really, really well.
Mm.
And I also personally believe in this kind of environment, the people who will do well, who will thrive and be successful, are the ones who are curious to learn new things,
Mm.
those who can comprehend situations, complex scenarios, solutions faster, and those who possess strong problem solving skills. So
Mhm.
that combination is something that will take people further in this kind of environment. You can't just say that I know this language, I'm going to do this language, I'll build expertise around it, and live with that language throughout my career. That's not going to happen. That world is over, right? So we are in a very, very different world now.
So
And
yeah,
but just yeah,
yeah,
please go on. You say
yeah,
something.
yeah. Continue, please.
Yeah. The other aspect, I think, is we talk about emotional quotient, we talk about
Yes.
intelligence quotient. There's this new quotient that is being assessed on, which is your learning quotient,
Mm.
right? What is your adaptability? What is your agility? How quickly do you learn things? These are the things being assessed on in the interview now. Are
Mm.
you just fixate? Do you have that fixed mindset, or do you have a growth mindset?
Mm.
Are you somebody who's adaptable? Are you somebody who could pick up new things faster, or do you take time? How
Mm.
good are you in problem solving, as I spoke about earlier? So these are the skills being assessed on. These are the skills the organizations are really focusing on to hire for the future of work, workforce.
Great, great insights from a veteran. So, how are like basically, I want to ask how are banks leveraging automation, AI, and emerging tech, and in the recruitment processes to find like top talent out there in the market?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm the biggest proponent of this line that says, "Let recruiters recruit."
Yeah.
The recruiters have a very difficult job of interfacing between your internal client stakeholders and also the market.
Yes.
You have to really go out there, get the best talent for your organization, maintain relationship with your candidate, ensure the experience in every aspect of that is taken
Mm.
care of. You also have to look within and be an advisory to your businesses, right? So it's a tough job. um, and then but when you look your recruiters around, they are mostly inundated with a lot of administrative tasks, a lot of manual tasks, or they have to
Mm.
review thousands of applications to find that one candidate that fits the most,
Exactly.
right? And you also have, unfortunately, we receive so many of irrelevant applications on our systems. 95% of the application that you receive are probably not relevant to what the job demands, right?
Mm.
um, and there is candidate feedback, which is very important. Everybody would like to hear back, be it through system or
Mm.
or directly, right, in person. So I think AI and automation is really trying to solve for that for now, I think. And I think that will give recruiters a lot of bandwidth and also improve the overall candidate experience in a longer run.
Yes.
But having said that, in my view, there is and always will be a genuine need for that specialist recruiter, executive search
Exactly.
person to identify the top talent.
Mm.
AI and automation tools are, of course, valuable assets, but the human factor that we talk about in human resources, the networking, long-term relationship building with your candidates, are non-replaceable in my view.
Exactly.
Um, lot of research and articles, I'm sure,
Mm.
Sarabjit, you would have been preview of on how
Yes.
AI usage and will be embedded more in recruiting, how it
Mm.
will really transform.
Mm.
And there seems a very little doubt that AI will continue to be embedded more in recruiting and selection process.
Mm.
It is already, your product is amazing. I've seen the
Great.
gist of it, and I think you guys are doing some fantastic work in that direction. Uh, and to me, it is impacting the three most essential matrices in recruitment as we measure ourselves: cost, quality, and time.
Mm.
Right? It has that direct impact, is what I believe. Now, and the other aspect we hear a lot, and I'm sure you will have questions around that point at some point, which is diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
I think the CXO's biggest worries are is our interview process unbiased?
Yes.
Is the selection process unbiased?
Mm.
Right? I think AI and automation has a huge role to play there.
Mm.
But I think what we really need to be careful about how well designed and programmed these AI tools are.
How
Right?
you're
At the
training your
end,
systems? Yeah. Exactly.
because
Yes.
these are being coded by humans. So if there
Yeah.
is bias in the coding, it will come in your process. So I
Yes.
think the key is how well they are programmed and designed.
Exactly.
So I think there it has a very, very huge role to play. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at a later point. Um, now, looking from the banking organization or setup perspective, the data
Mm-hmm.
privacy, legal, regulatory requirement plays a huge role when
Mm.
you want to implement any new tools on technology, candidates' privacy, how are we storing data, where are we storing data. That's very,
Mm.
very close to any banking organization.
Mm.
Amidst all that, what's gaining the popularity within banking sector is your resume screening tools.
Mm.
How can you really sift through hundreds of applications to find that top talent which fits your requirement,
Mm.
and with a lot of analytics insights to know which who will be the most suitable for the role and who
Mm.
will also succeed in the role. Right? That is
Exactly.
predictive analytics of
It reduces the
finding the
attrition.
right talent.
Yes. Also, the cultural
Right?
fit also is very important. Yes.
Yeah, it's not just control five times Java and say, oh, this
Ah.
person probably is
Yes.
more
Yes.
suitable. There is whole lot science behind it, around it, which will really help to simplify the overall interview process and the hiring process.
Mm.
Some of the other things that are catching up in the banking sectors are the video interviews, which will probably give back some time to the hiring manager who are
Mm.
inundated with the multiple number of interviews that they do throughout the
Yeah.
hiring process, and the top of the funnel filtering methods.
Mm.
I think that's the need of the hour. We haven't really been successful in India for some reason. People
Mm.
don't like to take the test first before going through the interview process.
Exactly.
The mentality or the mindset in India is that they would like to be assessed. At some point, they're okay. They're open to take those any of these hacker rank, higher view tests, but not
Mm.
as the first step.
Mm.
But probably we don't probably don't have the right solution right now that really solves for it. But that's the need of the hour. I would think that top of the funnel screening method
Mm.
would really save your time for everybody involved, be it candidates, hiring manager, and recruiters, and
Yeah.
improve the selection process.
Yeah, great points you have made. 95% are irrelevant that we have already seen, and we are solving currently. And there is also one thing which is you have mentioned, that candidate personality, where the candidate wants to go, and the company DNA, how the company hires. Say, for example, company A, bank A will hire something like this, bunch of candidates like this for their Java. Company B will hire something like this, for the same role, but different sets of companies they will hire from. So this all needs to be matched, so that we are trying to solve as of now. But yeah, very valid points made. And a lot of technology has been coming in and will hopefully help all the companies out there. So a different a bit of question from the general questions which we have been asking is, how has the shift towards remote and hybrid work models impacted the sector's hiring process and workforce management? Like, kind of, when you go from in office to remote or hybrid, there is a lot of emphasis on candidate engagement, right? Emphasis on how you are motivating a candidate to move from stage A to stage B when they have like five more offers, and how you are engaging with the top leadership. Because when you are like onboarding a candidate, when you're coming into office, you can see all the people, right? You can see the team, you can see beautiful offices and all that. But on the internet, you have nothing else. Like, either you can give them learning, like you can give them certain learning which they can avail. But normally, mostly, as we have spoken to a lot of companies, very large companies and also startups, they say that we are on a level playing field right now. So how do you think of this?
So again, in the banking organization, I'm assuming you're asking this question, right? So I think everything centers around the employee and the candidate experience,
Okay.
clearly, right? So
Mm.
that's at the center of every and any strategy that we
Mm.
form.
Mm.
That how is the experience for the candidate and eventually when he or she becomes an employee to the organization. Now,
Mm.
with most of the banking organizations, they've adopted a very well planned approach on defining and designing the future of work model.
Okay.
Each role in the organization, when I say each role, probably a job profile or at a job level, is being reviewed carefully to designate either whether it is a remote role or a hybrid role or a resident role,
Mm.
and leaving very little opportunity for ambiguity or any exception on a case to case basis. And the second point to that is the number of surveys that are done in the last few years, and
Mhm.
across globe, across India, really tells us that people prefers to opt for hybrid work arrangement. And clearly,
Okay.
most organizations and senior leadership no longer see a world where all employees needs to come to office every day.
Mm.
There are exceptions. There are people who have different point of view, but this is by and large what survey tells us. Like majority
Okay.
of the people prefer this kind of environment.
Mm.
Now, with banks have taken significant amount of time in designing that model, and which is
Okay.
sustainable, which is less prone to frequent changes. So that gives us a clarity in terms when you're reaching out to candidate, at the onset whether this role is a resident role, whether this is a hybrid role, or whether this will require the person to can work freely from a remote. Right. So
Mm.
that sets at the beginning, at the onset of the process, what how you would really want to form your sourcing strategy.
Mm.
So, for an example, I know this role is remote. I can hire any people from anywhere in India or
Mm. Mm.
outside, for that matter. That gives recruiter the broader canvas to look for talent across geographies. The tier two location, which probably wasn't as explored in the past, is now being leveraged as well. So
Great.
that also gives opportunity to lot many people in the remotest location of country to apply for organizations probably are in just metros now. So I think that clarity gives you strengthens your planning of talent attraction. Now, the second part of your question, which is workforce management, to me, I think that's a lot more challenging. to drive
Yeah.
the culture in a hybrid or a
Yes.
remote setup, right?
Uh,
And what we have seen in pandemics, uh, the connect or the communication within team has gone up, right? Because
hmm.
you're connected every day, you're talking on Zoom, etc., etc. But when you look at broadly, the connect within the organization, largely outside your team, had significantly gone down.
Hmm.
And that's not a great culture, right? You don't want your team to just be operating within your silo and not learning from
Yeah.
or not collaborating outside. So
Hmm.
that's where probably organization have spent a lot of time and effort in driving that culture of collaboration outside your team, breaking the silos.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, organizations do work in teams and do work in silos sometimes, but that has its cons, right? That has longer impact to your productivity and your collaboration with the organization. Um, and to me, to driving that, you have to really enable your people manager. First of all, you need to have tools, technology that supports collaboration if you're working in
Hmm.
a remote or a hybrid environment. That goes without saying. And there are great tools available now in the market. But the
Hmm.
second is how are you really in softer aspect of how are you enabling your hiring managers to understand how do you engage with your employees in a hybrid environment where half of the team is sitting in office and half not? Are you
Yeah.
engaging with everybody equally, or are you kind of
Hmm.
unconsciously you're kind of engaging more with the people who are in office,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
those who are designated remote are left out? So how
Exactly.
are you making that culture, which is where your hiring manager, your people managers in the organization at the middle level people manager know how do I engage in such an environment? What tools, technology, resources available with me, and
Hmm.
how do I strike conversation on collaboration, performance measurement, evaluation, even if they are not in the organization? I'm not meeting them on a
Hmm.
regular day. So I think that has been the most difficult part. Some of the organizations have done commendable job in getting the right tools, technology, but
Hmm.
also investing on the softer aspect on training their people managers
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
more efficient in managing such workforce.
Right. Also, when you say about the workforce and it has become like that, your talent pool has become fluid, right? You can hire from anywhere. You don't have to, like as you said, not from the metros, but from tier two, tier three cities. It has it also helped in getting a diverse perspective because a guy from a metro and a guy from a tier two, tier three cities can think differently, maybe, and that is also maybe helping the cause, right? Like they might think of innovation as some like innovation in a different light altogether, or maybe this hybrid model or remote models, as we have also discussed with other leaders, they have also said that it also helps in diversity because a lot of flexibility is there. So what do you think of this? Like it has also brought on a lot of flexibility and help to people and brought new innovation also into the system.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're right, right? And as I said earlier, we are we are a country within countries,
Yes.
countries within country, and there are different perspectives. That's the beauty of our nation. Uh, every you go south, there are different perspectives. You go north, there is different perspective. East, different. West, different, and which is the beauty of what as a nation that we offer.
Exactly.
And the tier two probably hasn't been exposed to so much in the past, or probably not
Hmm.
been given so much opportunity unless they relocate to metros. That is really opening up. There is a lot of excitement,
Exactly.
from those sects when they are getting to work with a larger organization, completely remote. You don't have to relocate. You don't have to shift.
Hmm.
Staying within your hometown and in being part of global organization, contributing towards bigger thing. And our businesses are also as diverse as our workforce, right? So
Exactly.
to cater to that business needs, you need diverse ideas.
Yes.
If I'm developing a product or a services which is going to
Hmm.
cater to multi-generational customer base, I would need input from all sects from my workforce, right? I would need representation from different generation. I need representation from different gender,
Hmm.
sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, all of that, right? So that always makes your product much more, gives you that mass appeal and more scalable in that nature.
Great. Uh, Bilal, we have talked about employer branding in the first question, which I asked about employer branding, and you have talked also about demand supply gap. So when there is a demand supply gap, and then there is a lot of competitive, like you have a lot of competition in the banking and BFSI and the financial sectors. and then you have the demand supply gap. So right now you're looking at a bunch of candidates, and which has been looked upon by multiple companies. So here employer branding, or how you market your company, as you told, that putting the word out becomes very important. As in new age companies also coming in, they, as you told, that they have people do not think that larger companies can innovate, but they are innovating actually, and they are putting the word out. And how do you think for larger companies, or larger banks to be in focus, employer branding, or how leadership connects with the new candidates or new bunch of people who have been applying, can help, and how it has evolved, the employer branding part?
I think hugely. If I were to answer that question in just one word, hugely, right?
Yeah.
I think it is now proven with organization with positive employer brand receives twice as many applications with the than the organization who probably doesn't have good representation out there.
Yes.
And each segment sector organization have very different offering, nature of work, quality of work, perks, benefits. And I personally don't believe in dog theory, right? So I don't believe in then competition we're eating each other out. I think it's the era where we coexist and find that common ground. And I spoke about the diversity of our workforce, the diversity of our nation, um, that also have diverse interest. There are people, say for an example, people who work in a bank. There are certain people who probably wouldn't want to work with product or fintech organization because they like the culture, how things work happens
Yeah.
in bank, or all of that. And the vice versa could be true too. And there is plenty of talent available. It's just that you really need to get right people for your organization. So, as a bank, I wouldn't rather like to compete with a fintech organization or product organization to define my branding strategy.
Hmm.
My focus rather would be putting my value proposition in a very transparent yet in a very engaging way to really give that proposition for prospect employee to look at what do they get when they join this my organization.
Hmm.
There could be people who are probably not interested because they don't really resonate with how you work and what you offer. But there could be people who would, right? We are looking at reaching out to those people who are actually aligned to our cultural aspect, or aligned to our ideologies and thought process. Those will stay, and those will also, I mean, retention is also a big issue apart from offer dropout. So
Yes.
it is, if you get the right person, right fit, not just from the skill perspective, but from a mindset and from a cultural standpoint, I think that is a win-win. So in my view, your brand must reflect the uniqueness of it as much as it does your, perks, benefits, and all of that. So what is that
Exactly.
uniqueness proposition that has to really come out well?
Yeah, I think the major advantage of banks versus this other companies, smaller companies which coming up, is the scale. The scale
Yeah.
is like million times what the new companies can be offering, and that is where like people will be more attracted to, because they can work on a scale which is in billions of transactions, not in like millions or thousands of transactions. That is one thing which I think has been one of the, I've been seeing a lot of branding from very huge banks, and they have more focus on this kind of things. And diversity is also one of the major employer branding aspects, which, as you correctly told, that were done. And we come to the next question, is also was touched upon by you in the previous questions, is how are like banks and the banking sector fostering a culture of continuous learning and upskilling to help their workforce adapt to a very rapidly changing technological landscape. Like rapidly changing means like in a few last few months we have been hearing about web 2 to web 3. There are a lot of things like DeFi and NFT coming in, and then there is a decentralization, and all these things are happening. Plus there are other things which are happening in banks, like UPI and on banking on your fingertips, and all a lot of technological aspects have been changing. So how do you think continuous learning and upskilling has been proposed by larger banks, from your side? Like what is your perspective on this?
Sure. I think you spoke about the culture of continuous learning, and when you talk about building a culture of continuous learning, one really needs to focus on changing the mindset,
Yes.
right? I think that's what most of the banking organizations, in my view, are really focusing on. Your core values of the organization should really be focusing on changing the mindset towards learning and adaptability.
Mm,
When I spoke about we're assessing you on your learning question, but what are we really doing to
mm,
provide you that continuous learning? So that
exactly.
has to start from the day you apply for an interview to know as an organization, culturally, your core values is one of the principles that how you develop, innovate, and curate, grow in the organization.
Mm, mm,
And if you look at now, I think with most of the large organizations, there are so many tools, technologies, platforms available for learning, and numbers of it, right? The global platforms. So the abundance of it is not really a solution. In my view, the solution is the mindset, and how do you really integrate all of that is available to you with your performance management cycles, right? Can you probably have learning as a development program as part of your performance discussion? So at the beginning of the year, you sit down with your manager and decide, oh, these are my key areas, these are something that I need to achieve through the year. Can you also have discussion to talk about what are my strengths, opportunities, and developmental areas? How you as a manager can really help me
mm,
find trainings in this whole ecosystem that's available, online classroom, etc., to really help me develop. How much
mm,
of it is will help me in my current job, and how much of it is like focusing towards the future of work, like what's probably will change. Maybe
mm,
I'm a Java developer, but I want to learn artificial intelligence because
exactly.
it's catching up. How can you? What are the options available? So this conversation should, as much as the individual should take accountability of it, it's also a responsibility of manager in the organization to provide those avenues and integrate it in a system, in a process, in a way that it becomes a mandatory part of your discussion every time you do your performance discussion. So it's not just about me talking about how did I fare in my 6 months or 1 year, but what was my development plan at the beginning of the year. These are the trainings I did, and this is where I see I have grown or developed or did not develop, or probably I need more help. So that bit of it is very, very important.
Mm,
Individual development program should also be given equal weightage to your performance in the job that is expected,
mm,
right? And the very unique part of it, if you look at now, we are uh, I think the first time we have four different generation
mm,
at a workplace. So
yeah,
imagine the need of different generation could be very varying.
yeah,
Some probably would be okay with your typical classroom training. Some would want on the go on.
yeah,
I could do it on my mobile. I could do it at my pace, sort of thing. And there are different training approaches. If you look at the very traditional approach of implementing a learning program, is like when you launch a program, ask one of your senior leadership to endorse it, and expect people will enroll and take up those training. That's a very old school thought process, and that may work. That may still work, right, with a lot of people. But when you're dealing with this multi generational employee base, this is being revisited. You'll also
yes.
have to give a lot of different that push strategy on learning and development may
Mm,
not work with everybody, right? Especially with
yeah,
Gen Z and millennials, right? You'll have to really offer all sorts of solutions that are available for you. That is your
mm,
classroom, traditional, old school training, to your self-paced training, integrated to your job. Some people
mm,
don't want to do anything beyond what will really impact their current job. So how can
yes.
you really talk about training which may impact your current job and make you do your current role better? So the integrating it of it, and when you have so many options, and giving some structure, a systemic solution to it, probably is an answer to this question.
Great. And what do you think about people like who will be taking bite-sized training to upgrade themselves? Suppose, as you told, that the Java developer wants to learn AI, and he has learned AI, and how can he be redeployed in the same organization and or be rewarded for like a promotion because he or she knows the skills which are needed for a developer. I think that is also one thing which many. What do you think about this? And many companies might be for doing this in the next few years, maybe.
Yeah. So I'll tie this with the internal mobility. Right.
Okay.
With large organization, you always have thousands of jobs open at any point of time.
Mm,
Uh, and then the other side, you have that employee mobility policy, which is very cumbersome, very
yeah.
bureaucratic for you to know that there is this job available, but my approvals policy, etc., is so lengthy that I know I'm
Mm.
not going to get through. And then
Exactly.
the retaliation if I even express interest. So most of the banking organization have really focused on simplifying the internal mobility policy, reducing probably the eligibility criteria.
Mm.
Probably would need 2 years to be eligible, probably shortened to 1 year to be eligible, or 6 months to be eligible to apply within. So A, you have a lot of job opportunities available internally if you
Mm.
are working with a large, fast-growing organization, and B, you have great policy that supports your movement. Right. So when
Okay.
you bring that two together, unfortunately, in a lot of organization, either you have roles but not great policy, or you have great policy but not a lot of jobs for you to look at. Right. So
Okay.
that doesn't help. So there has been a lot of focus in simplifying that aspect in the past few years as well in the banking industry.
Great. We come to the last question of this session, and then we will go to the audience to take some questions. Um, the last question is, as you already told about inclusion and diversity. What are the best practices for creating an inclusive and diverse work environment in this BFSI banking sector, and how does it impact talent acquisition and retention? Expert.
I'm really glad that you asked inclusion and diversity and not diversity and inclusion, because I fundamentally believe that inclusion comes first. And there's another very good line I read somewhere which says, diversity is a fact, but inclusion is an act, right?
Yes.
And sometimes people probably, if you're not made aware of stats, you would think that we are doing progressing really well on diversity agenda across. We are
Mm.
bridging the gap. But if you look at some of the facts recently that came to my attention, uh,
Mm.
during pandemic, there were 65 million more women who've lost their job than men. Is
Mm.
that equality? To me, it doesn't sound equality, right? Recent Russia-Ukraine war has only broadened the gap further, in my view. So
Mm.
while we keep talking about promoting diversity, I think there is still a lot that needs to be done. And we spoke about the generational diversity. When you have four different generation at workplace, then your policies benefits has to be really catering to very wide variety of the employee base that you have. So if
Mm.
you're offering as a benefit a gym membership, would it appeal to everybody across whole generation? Maybe not. If you're
Mm.
offering club resorts subscription, would it appeal to everybody? Maybe not. Executive health checkup, would it appeal to somebody who's just young out of college and probably would want a gym membership? So
Mm.
you don't have that. You have to really craft a tailor made policies and policy
Mm.
which is inclusive, the benefits which are inclusive across your organization,
Mm.
because you're dealing with multi-generational workforce, you're dealing with hybrid workforce, remote workforce, right? So there is a lot of other aspects. You'll have to really very finely curate those policies which are inclusive in itself. So
Mm.
that is one aspect of the inclusion that organization had to really spend a lot of time. If after pandemic, because of this whole hybrid remote work environment and a lot of other representation that has increased over the past few years. But from an inclusion standpoint, one of the other strategy which I've seen, which is very fundamental, which most of the organization investing on, is improving the listening across organization.
Mm.
Listening across hierarchies, across organization is very, very important. And you could do this with multiple. There are multiple ways that you could achieve this. You could have it with one-on-one connect, workshop, focus group discussion, or you could run an employee opinion survey.
Mm.
So there has been a lot of investment in ensuring that the CXOs are listening to what everybody feels, and then of course once you've heard, how are you taking further action on improving things and stuff like that, and to create that environment where your employees feel valued, heard, and have that psychological safety to be themselves in the organization. Your diverse employees itself can really make that impact, right? So, do you have affinity groups in the organization that provide that safety net for people to come up and talk about issues, etc., openly, freely, and that
Mm.
takes that to the next course with the senior leadership in the organization to further action, improve it, solve for.
Mm.
So employee for employee. It's not that HR is solving everything. You have the representation from the community that probably feel marginalized or does not feel included to have an opportunity to voice their concern and be heard, because you're improving your listening in the
Mm.
organization.
Mm.
So these are some of the things that that probably would be helpful in building that inclusive environment, and the retention, I think, is a byproduct. If you have a culture where you feel that psychological safety, where you feel that you're valued, you are heard, your opinion matters, your opinion at least is being received, you would stay in the organization. I don't think so there is much that you have to do after that.
Great. Okay. Also, you told that the talent pool after COVID and due to this remote work has become fluid, and you can induct people from different cultural values. And that is also a cultural diversity thing which is coming in. And I think that is also one of the most important aspects. A change in the diversity, which is like the cultural diversity. Normally we talk about gender diversity and other kinds of diversity, but there is a cultural diversity also, as you told that India has a lot of India's inside.
Mm.
The Pune has differently, Bombay has differently, and a town in say Chhattisgarh, a person coming from there will have an entirely different cultural values from different from a person maybe living in a metro. So how do you think this also has changed? The policies have been modified to accommodate this kind of people. Like.
Not to that extent so much largely. I think the focus right now is broadening the diversity agenda beyond gender for sure, right? I mean, we're talking about hiring veterans in the organization. There are MOUs being signed with Indian Navy
Mhm.
or with Army for that matter to hire more people through a veteran channel.
Mhm.
LGBTQI hiring, there is a lot that's happening in terms of ensuring that you have gender neutral policies or benefits, perks to attract that talent, differently abled. So I think decades from here, I mean, if you would ask me the same question, the focus was more on diversity, diversity. It is
Mhm.
expanding. Every year it is expanding, and there is a lot of good work that's happening across organization. So I think more to come on this, right? I think the definition of diversity in a good sense is improving. The good news probably right now is Sajid is that we don't have to really now define or probably call out why diversity matters, right? So I think we passed that age where we have to really explain people why diversity matters. We know that diversity matters because it makes economic sense. It makes a business sense as well. It is not just like a good to do HR thing or to have just representation. It also adds a lot of value to your revenue and business as well.
Understood. So, with that, let's move on to the question from the users which we have. So,
Sure.
can we start it off?
Sure, subject.
Yeah. So the first question is from Daksh. Daksh from Bangalore. So, what is the future of technology hiring? Given banks are getting more into financial products after the UPI and UPI launch. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay. Thank you, Dax, for asking this question. I think technology has its hand in seemingly every aspect of the banking industry now.
Yes.
There are times I feel like I'm working with a technology organization, not with a bank. Because the influence of technology is really redefining the
Mm.
digitized future that banking is going towards. And digitization is changing how people interact, do business on a day-to-day basis. It's advancing the banking technology in a very, very different way. What I'm anticipating now is probably a more hyper personalized future for banking organization. That means it integrates your analytics AI to technology to look at what tailor-made products that you could offer to the to the individual with certain likes. And it needs a lot of artificial intelligence. It needs a lot of machine learning and data analytics to do that. So
Mm.
the complexity of technology in a bank is only going to grow and get more cutting edge, in my view. So the opportunities are huge, and as I said earlier, we are already seeing the complexity of technology hiring growing multifold. We are seeing about 50% of the technology workforce are being hired at an AVP and above level. That means you're looking for more senior talent to build capabilities within country to deliver global solutions from here as well.
Okay. Okay. Great. So I think Daksh, you have got your answer. Sundar is from Noida. He is asked that how will BFSI evolve in terms of salaries as compared to internet companies, internet product companies. So, what is your take on this? As you told in the beginning that there will be a lot of competition, but you are not you are putting it a different perspective out there. and putting a word also.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question. In my view, the salaries for any role or any skill is decided by two parameters. One is how difficult and complex that skill is to learn. So, for an example, we know that AI or machine learning, etc., is relatively tougher to, call yourself an expert as, right? Uh, and secondly, what is the need of those skills in the industry?
Hmm.
If it is tough to learn and acquire, you know that there will be lesser people who will be able to master it. And if there is a need for it, that will really increase the wage for that skill. So you know, it is very agnostic to which industry that skill is being hired for. The organization will have to pay what that skill demands in the market.
Hmm.
Structurally, it may look very different, right? Some of the banking organization, the comp structure may not have stocks or bonuses, joining bonuses per se. Most of the stable organization who've been there for hundreds of years don't really have to lure candidates by putting those stickiness in the offer. Their offers are usually cash based and offer incentives based on your performance. And holistically, if you look at it, it'll probably be as good as probably what fintech and product organizations are offering in the longer run. But it's just the structure of the offer would vary.
Okay.
The strategy probably a startup will take to form their comp structure, a very well established bank need not. Right? They don't really have to put their name out there to attract talent. Their stability, their brand reputation, their centuries of work that they've done, it stands for it itself. So their offer compensation would be different, but nobody will be shortchanged on the compensation that it deserves in the industry, I would think.
Hmm. Great, great. So let's go to another question from Nana. She has asked that: do you think there will be a product-led growth mindset for BFSI companies in the near future? Uh, Product-led growth like will be like they're more focused on the product, and the product will lead it. Like you don't need marketing, you don't need sales. The product will lead the growth. People will adopt it. The virality of the product will bring more users to it.
I think probably an integrated or a blended approach
Hmm.
uh, that will
Okay.
you will witness in the banking finance industry. Product
Hmm.
led, yes, it has already gone in that direction. But the services that bank offers, the centuries of work that they have in offering some of the services are very unique to what bank does. Be it about say regulatory requirement or the licenses to do credit cards or license to commercial banking, all of that may not be like a fintech or a neobank may not be able to operate with. So the bank has its own uniqueness of what they offer in terms of solution,
Hmm.
which are very unique to them in terms of their services. But there is also a realization of the product-led growth that the bank needs to drive to generate more revenue. One of the things that I spoke about, which is hyper personalized future, that is completely product led. Right? You'll have to have technology products that kind of really curates
Hmm.
that for you to know that this person would like these services, and that's how you'll be able to attract that customer or the consumer base. So I think it's a blended approach that's probably will be headed on.
Okay. Okay. So we come to the last question for tonight, and this is from Akshay from Mumbai. How will banks adopt to the challenges by the new fintech companies out there? So, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I spoke about I don't believe in that dog eat dog theory, and thankfully not many other CXO sees that way. So nobody's probably there were probably people who were looking at as a threat to banking setup, but
Yeah.
it is not being looked upon it as more. There are more collaboration happening with banks and fintech organization. Probably you're seeing more in news and more in your apps, right? And banks have, as I said, very different offering, right? To
Hmm.
get those license to do credit card, to do commercial banking, merger acquisition, it's not easy.
Hmm.
It's expensive. B,
Yeah.
it is timely. Secondly, the whole regulatory and the legal requirement, the expertise that bank has is very unique to them, right? Be it on mortgage, loan, and all of that. So it is. You will see a lot more collaboration in the years to come between fintech organization, bank, and hopefully not that dog eat dog theory that we spoke
Okay.
about.
Great. Lovely to have you, Bilal. As last few words for our TA heads, recruiters, and young recruiters also who are coming into the segment. Any piece of advice for them to help them become better with their skill and trade?
Yeah, there's only one thing that I keep telling my recruiters, right? I
Okay.
mean, when you're dealing with so much of transactions volume, in which we all did in the last couple of years, and hopefully we get
Hmm.
to see the future to come, we often forget that is a person that's receiving that services. So we
Okay.
sometimes forget that we're doing this transaction, forget there's a person at the end of the transaction receiving our services.
Hmm.
The human resources part, the human element of our role, we should never forget. You may be inundated with a lot of transaction volume, but remember that at the end of the day, you are catering to a human and your services are targeted towards a human. So be mindful of that. Be kind. Be acknowledging, and continue the great thing that we all have been doing. Thank you.
Great. That's very thoughtful and an excellent piece of advice for all the fellow folks who have joined here. Thank you for joining in, folks. And
Pleasure.
thank you, Bilal, for taking out time from a busy schedule and sharing your very, very powerful insights, which can help a lot of people. And this episode will be available everywhere on our YouTube channel, on our website and newsletter. And everyone, we have a lot of questions on live chat also. I will send it across. Maybe you can help them out. Okay, with that, we come to an end of the Instahyre Roundtable. Thank you, Bilal, for your time. And thank you,
Thank you for
folks.
having me.
Sure. Take care.
Thank you.
Have fun.